Hello and welcome to Forder on Football, and it's the Cannon Forder podcast. And this week, I am very proud to say I have got Dan Potts. Welcome, Dan.
Mate, thank you so much for having me, man. Absolute pleasure to be here. Big up to yourself, and make sure everyone's doing the usual, which is, of course, like and subscribe. Big up for having me on, Alex.
Yeah, and if you haven't, I'm sure you will have, but make sure you do go to the 12th Man and follow Dan. And also go onto Twitter, or X as it's called. I'm an old man these days. So yeah, go on X and make sure you follow Dan. His tag is down underneath, so go do that. Before we get started, Dan, and have a little chat about Declan Rice. He's getting a bit of heat, let's put it that way, over in England. I don't think rightly so, but I thought we could have a little chat, see what you think about his position and how you think he's getting on. So I'll leave the floor to you, Dan.
Declan Rice is probably one of my favourite players. If I'm honest with you, in an Arsenal shirt, I was so impressed last year, brother. I really was. I thought he was outstanding in every position that he played. And I think people have underestimated, I think, how good he was at West Ham. And I think sometimes a lot of Arsenal fans want to kind of shout down some of the West Ham fans for bigging him up and overhyping him. But I think we've seen how good he is and perhaps understood why West Ham fans were giving him so much hype. And I think that when you're doing it for club and country, you know you're a good player. And I know that England have been poor in the Euros, but I don't think he's been poor overall in an England shirt over the last, 2 to 3 years that he's been picked under Gareth Southgate. So when you're doing it for club and country, you've got to be, hats off to the guy. I also think as well, in terms of him as a midfielder, I actually believe he's an all-round midfielder, Alex. I think he's got everything about his game that I like in a footballer. In terms of interceptions, in terms of drive on the ball, I think he's a good ball carrier as well as the dirty work that he does. And I think also there's leadership qualities on and off the pitch. I think he handles the media incredibly well. I think he's
Yeah,
somebody who I
definitely.
would happily give the armband to if Erdegaard was not around. So I do think that this has been a fantastic signing. And I don't really know why he's getting the stick, but there seems to be a certain couple of pundits that believe that he should be doing more on the ball. Well, we've got players in front of him such as Bellingham, Foden, Saka himself, Palmer when he's on the pitch, and of course Harry Kane. But they don't seem to be getting the stick. It seems to be Declan Rice. Well, he's doing his job defensively. We actually haven't looked too bad defensively, I don't think, England. It's been going forward that's been the problem. So why are we not getting any of the heat on the other guys? It's a bit of a strange one. I don't really like the comments from Paul Scholes. I thought it was quite patronising. I mean, don't get me wrong; he's one of the best players I've seen in the Premier League in his position. But punditry is not his forte.
Forte.
Let me tell you that. So yeah, I don't know why he's getting the stick, but Declan Rice can play in both positions, mate, and he's got everything as a midfielder I like in football. So big fan, bro. Big fan.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think we're in a position now, and I think a lot of people look at players as like kind of old school, like you are a centre back, you are a right back, and we can see the blurring of the lines in the defence now. You know, you look at Pep, you look at Arteta, they're playing kind of those traditional centre backs out wide now. And I think Declan Rice is one of the first players that we kind of look at, and I think years gone by we would have said he's a number 6, isn't he? But now he's obviously talented enough to play as a 6, to play as an 8. We even saw Jorginho playing in the 8 role at one point, and that I think that's testament to how good Declan Rice is. If you can get someone literally has no legs to play in an 8 role and look that good, I think that says a lot about that man. But it's interesting, like you say about certain pundits. I think social media's gone mad this year, especially in the Euros. There's so much tribalism around, and players seem to be getting that kind of that stick, that heat, simply because they're not playing for another club. It's interesting you said, like, we used to kind of say, oh, well, Declan Rice, can he make the step up? You know, he's only doing it at West Ham. And then we had that turn of the tide where the West Ham fans were on his back, which I couldn't believe. I thought, I don't know, they got a lot of money from him. They got a lot of, good memories. They got a European trophy, albeit, not the biggest one, but, it still goes down as a trophy. And I was really surprised at the kind of backlash he got from, moving across London. But, that's football, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, it is football, and unfortunately in social media you get that, and we wonder why England don't win anything. We're too busy slagging all the players off, and we got this with Beckham, we got this with Rooney, we got this with Terry. The decades go on, and we seem to pick on the better players
Yeah.
for some reason, and it looks like we're doing the same thing again. Bellingham was getting it not long ago. Rice is now getting it. It's very, very strange, and I think because we're such a passionate country, we always want our players to do the best. And when they're not, and it's another team like Foden, oh my God, I hate the fact he's so good at Man City. Let's just slate him and say that he's rubbish now all of a sudden. Like, where does it come from, man? And
Yeah.
like for me, there's problems with the manager. I don't want to go into this on this podcast, but for me, there's problems with the manager, not the players. And I think that the players have clearly shown their class, winning trebles and Champions Leagues and Premier Leagues and God knows what, So I think that unfortunately we are in a country where we seem to have a hell of a lot of tribalism and just want to kind of poke fun at each other's players. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, we're real good at building people up and then knocking them down.
100%.
Like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I feel sorry for all the youngsters now coming through. There's they get no leeway. You look at Saka, his trajectory has been incredible. There's not many people that just keep going up and up and up. You usually have the peaks and the troughs, don't you? And we've been real lucky with him. I think, especially being Arsenal. I mean, I'm an Arsenal fan, so I'm going to say, we get a little bit more stick than anyone else, it seems, in the media with our players. You look at Italy losing recently, Jorginho's front page. He wasn't even on the pitch. So I think sometimes, our players do get a little bit more, but we're lucky that he has had such good development. I think if he had a year like Martinelli did, I think it would have been an enormous story this year. I really do. I do feel for them all. Going kind of into Declan Rice and transfers then, who are you kind of looking to bring in? If you're bringing a midfielder, would you be looking at a 6, at an 8, or both? Or what are your kind of, let's put you in Edu's position. You got a nice barbecue, Dan. You're making a couple of phone calls. Who are you ringing up for? What's your plan?
Well, I'll be jumping on a jet ski with a cigar and a barbecue, mate. That's the first one I'll be doing because that's all that seems to happen to start with Edu to chill him out. Listen, we're in a position with Declan Rice where you have to work out where you believe his position is, because in the first team, we know he can play both. But when everybody is fit, where is he? Is he a 6? Is he an 8? I think he's been phenomenal in both positions. And I honestly can not tell you where I think he's better. Where I enjoy watching him the most is in the 8, though, I must say. I think when he's driving forward and being a part of the late runs into the box and contributing to goals and assists, I really like watching him there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to say that I don't love him as an interception or a destroyer in the Rodri role. I think he's phenomenal there as well. But I think if we was to go and get that kind of destroyer that perhaps we need or haven't had in the last few years, then you can look at who is better there. I think we need both, bruv. I think we need both. I think we need 6 and an 8. And with the uncertainty of fitness of Thomas Partey and the fact that we can't rely on a 33-year-old Jorginho anymore, I think we're going to be in a position where we do need to sign both now. People would have said that we needed a midfielder and we've lost El Neni. So that means we now need 2. Now, I know people will laugh and say, well, El Neni didn't kick a ball, but he was actually a body there that we needed in case somebody did get injured. So if we are going to be looking to go as close as we can, if not ahead of, and hopefully ahead of Manchester City, I think we're going to need a 6 and an 8. I mean, Rice is the only box-to-box midfielder that we've got. That's not good enough.
Yeah.
Not a club the size of Arsenal. We need somebody like a Yusuf Fofana, who would be somebody that I would bring in, who is a proper 8, a proper box-to-box man. And I think he's a top talent. I was really impressed with him at Monaco, played against us in the Emirates Cup. Really good aerially. I think he's great in terms of his physique, and he's definitely good in both boxes. Can do the defensive side of the game, but is really good going forward and can drive on the ball. So I think for me, for the price we're talking, Alex, it's got to be a no-brainer for me for Yusuf Fofana to be coming. And then you make the decision about who the 6 is. Is it going to be an Onana? Is it going to be a Zubimendi? Or is it going to be somebody you think, wow, I didn't see that one coming? Dare I say it, a Frankie de Jong or a Bruno Guimaraes or somebody like that makes you go, okay, that's exciting. I'm not sure because we're not heavily linked with anybody in midfield at the moment, but the rumours are that we're sniffing around a few of those names. I think we need a 6 and an 8. And I think that if we're not going to go and sign a big top £90 million Bruno Guimaraes or De Jong or somebody of that ilk, then maybe we look towards an Onana and a Fofana, if you can say that without tongue twisting, and then look to spend the majority of our cash up top. So that's maybe where our minds are at the moment. But I think we need both a 6 and an 8, yeah.
Yeah, I love the Fofana shout. I mean, what we've been quoted about 20 mil, is it? Like that?
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not that's true, I don't know. But his verticality is unbelievable. He's got that kind of that party, like that ball that goes straight through. And I think when we haven't had Party, which is about 3/4 of the season, most seasons, we miss that. Was it again? I think it was the buying game. He was the one who put Saka through towards the end of the game, and
He was.
sometimes we need that bite in midfield, that physically, but we also need that bite in midfield, someone that's going to pick up the ball, take responsibility and say, I'm going to make that pass. I'm going to, we've got to start making, I don't know what the word is, a bit more, taking more risks, essentially. I think
Yeah, I
sometimes
agree.
Arteta is very much defensively minded in a lot of ways. He kind of likes to stem attacks. He doesn't want us getting caught out. A lot of possession. He doesn't mind the wingers turning back in and retaining possession. But I do think we need that option. The Zubamendi kind of idea as a six, I can see the parallels between him and Jorginho. But again, I worry, personally, I think, are we just going to have another ball recycler, someone else who's going to kind of pass sideways and slow it down? Maybe we need that. I'm not paid like Arteta is to make those decisions, but I don't know. For me, I'd love Fofana, and De Jong would be another one. But again, his injury record's just it's not great, is it? Let's be honest. Is he injured at the moment?
No,
I think he's injured again, isn't he?
yeah, there's rumours that he's got a knock at the moment as well, and the problem I've got massively actually is most of the players that I would like at the club have terrible injury records.
Yeah,
Whether
yeah,
it's De Jong, whether it's Pedro Neto, whether it's Victor Osimhen, who people are talking about, whether it's Alexander Isak, who I'd be my number one by a long way, has had injury problems as well. I don't think you can go and buy players like that and go, yeah, but their injury record, because any player can get injured. You can go and
yeah,
buy Victor Gyökeres, who, believe it or not, has never been injured in his whole career, and he can then go and get an injury. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. And Thomas Partey's record was fantastic before he joined Arsenal in
yeah. It
terms of
was.
injury record, and it's been terrible with us. So we can get to a stage where you can go and look at injuries, but actually you need to be realistic and go, is that player going to improve us? Because I must say, Alex, I don't know about yourself, but the Saliba injury 2 years ago and the Thomas Partey injury in the last 2 years, where would Arsenal be if those players would have stayed fit for the whole season?
Yeah,
Would we have won something by now? Would we have got across the line? It's a huge question mark, of course, but I think it's debatable to say that we might have, because that's how close we were, and they're massively pivotal to us. Thomas Partey, when fit, I'm keeping him. He is a
yeah, yeah.
phenomenal footballer. So it's a close one. It really is. So fine margins, such fine margins.
Yeah, and don't we know as Arsenal fans with injuries? I mean, look at Timber this season. What did he play? About half an
Yeah,
hour, and then he's out for the whole season. And then we see him in the final game, and he was unbelievable. He's just, yeah, we've always had these problems. It seems like I reckon we've probably changed medical staff more than they've had lunches in that place, but it never seems to make much difference, unfortunately. But like you say, I remember Van Persie being injured season after season after season, and suddenly he's fit. And then what a season he had. So maybe we do take a punt on a De Jong. The price in terms of his ability, the price that Man United were quoted, I think it was about 70 million at the time. I think for a player, if you can keep him fit, a midfield of him, Rice and Odegaard would be unbelievable. I
agreed.
think they would rival any midfield in the world. I
Yeah,
mean,
it would. I think in terms of ball carrying, De Jong's one of the best I've seen.
hmm,
I think he's an unbelievable ball carrier. And some people have said that would he be okay physically for the league? I think so. I mean, he's got Rice there alongside him as well, and I think he's such a good footballer that I don't think that really matters as such. But I do believe that with Martin Odegaard and Rice, you've got two phenomenal footballers around you as
yeah,
well. He just complements that, and I think he would be phenomenal. I think him and Bruno Guimaraes are the two that I would look at that would go, yeah, I'm excited now in that midfield. With Fofana, I really like him. With Zubamendi, don't know much about him. Onana, still not sure. They don't really excite me to that level. Yusuf Fofana probably is the closest that does. But those names mentioned previously, if we was to get a De Jong or a Bruno, then wow, that would be a next level signing.
am I right? I mean, for those of you that don't know, so Dan is currently he's gone full time. So congrats on that. I love that, Dan. Honestly, I
Big up, man.
wish you all the best for that.
Thanks, bro.
So Dan's currently doing every single morning transfer news. I don't envy you there, Dan, because how you get that information out every single day is beyond me. I find it hard enough to get up in the morning with my kids, but let alone do that. But so I'm kind of looking at it and I'm thinking, do we need to go out and get a marquee signing now? Is a De Jong that? I don't know. Maybe years. If you're moving through our team, where do you kind of see the holes in the 11?
Mm.
Where would you kind of buy now?
Yeah,
That's
it's
my question for you.
interesting because there's probably I actually said this to Lee Judges yesterday, I think, or the day before. I think when you go through our 1 to 11, people know what it is.
Hmm.
But I don't know that in every position we've got one of the best players in the league. I think we've probably got 7 positions where we can debate that. I think Ben White would be considered as one of the best right backs in the league. I
Yeah.
think Gabriel and Saliba would not only be considered one of the best partnerships, but individually one of the best individual centre backs in the league. Rice, along with Rodri, would be considered
Hmm.
as one of the best in the league, and Erdegaard, along with KDB, would probably be seen as one of the best creative midfielders. Saka certainly would, and although he dropped off last year, Martinelli, I think he would be seen as one of the best left wingers in the league when on form. But
Hmm.
I think up top, we can't say that we've got that. You know, I
Yep.
think Havertz and Jesus do a job, but I don't see them as number nines. I see them as squad players. And I think as well, when you look at that left 8 role that we've spoken about, whether it's a Party and Rice and Erdegaard, we don't know if that's going to be, with the Party injury, a regular thing. That means that we've either got to go and get a proper destroyer in 6, or we've got to go and get a number 8. And that position, wherever that is, has to be made along with that striker. And then there's the left back scenario with Timber, where you don't quite know what you're going to get now because he's had such time out.
Hmm.
Zinchenko, really for me defensively. I think Tavares and Tierney's future is elsewhere. And then,
Yeah.
of course, you've got Tomiyasu or Kivior that can play there but aren't really first choice. So I think for me, you have to look at that and think where, along with the goalkeeper, who I still have question marks over, believe it or not.
Yeah, I'm with
Um,
you.
I think we look at that and think Raya's not one of the best in the league.
Hmm.
Left back, we don't know yet. We haven't got one of the best left 8s in the league unless Rice is there. We don't have one of the best strikers in the league. So that's clearly where we need to strengthen. And, we were linked with Joshua Kimmich, who I would actually love. The reason I didn't mention, because I just don't see he would come to Arsenal, but I would love him, be one of the first names that I'd look at, because I think that he can do a couple of roles versatile wise. He's going to bring leadership. He's going to bring experience. He's won everything in the game. I
Yeah.
think that would be a really good start for us. If that was an option for us to bring in, 29 years old, I think he'd be phenomenal for Arsenal. Manchester City are interested, and he's probably going to, if he goes there, do the Gundogan role, which is just not what we want at all, really, for him to be signing for them. I mean, they've got enough quality in their midfield, so it's an interesting one. But in terms of what I think we need, I think a striker, a midfielder, and then I think we need to look at the cover. And that's probably the hardest part where Arteta and Edu go, is how do you convince somebody to come and sit on the bench for Saka and
Yeah.
Saliba and, David Raya? These guys that we're going to try and tempt. It's like, yeah, brilliant. What's the project for me? The bench. It's going to be very, very difficult, and 15, 20
To
games
be
is
fair,
great.
on the money they're getting paid, I'd take it down. I'd happily sit on
100% I
that
would too.
bench. I'll tell you, if you're watching, Dan and I will sign up. Any position, I don't mind going left back. I'm not going to do a Saka and say I'm not going to go there, but well, yeah.
Yeah, man.
So, are there any names that you're thinking? Because, I mean, I completely agree with you. It's interesting you say about, bringing people as a backup to Saka. I'm looking at this Nico Williams kind of transfer, I guess we call it saga now. It's been going on a little while. I know Barca have kind of entered the mix. There's where they might have to sell De Jong to kind of bring him in. It's a real interesting one. He's on quite good money, let's be honest. And
Yeah.
at a club I never thought would give him that kind of money, especially at his age and what he's done. He is a player. I think it was on your live stream last night, actually. I put in the chat about him. I think he's played 74 games on the right. He's played 47 this season on the left. So he's obviously highly competent in both wings now. Is he a player that you'd like to get? Do you think he would be? I personally think he would look at the situation and go, you know what, I could probably take Saka or Martinelli out on my day.
Mm.
I can get either out of this team. And I have a feeling that Arteta and Edu might be looking at players who are going to push for that place and not do a Trossard where Trossard's, well, actually, to be fair to Trossard, maybe I'm doing him a disservice, but kind of come in to be that backup. Do we need floor raises or do we need ceiling raises?
Yeah, this one's really interesting. And the reason I say that is because we've got so many options to us in this wide area. but Saka and Martinelli are going to be first teamers, or you might even say Trossard is probably going to start left because of how he's finished the season and how good he was last season. The two top scorers were Saka and Trossard,
Yep.
and one of the best players in the back end of the season was Havertz. So on form, that's your front three, right? But when it comes to it, Nico Williams is someone I look at and go, yeah, exciting, flair player, took his goal magnificently for Spain the
Yeah.
other night. I thought he was outstanding. Um, he has got the tenacity and the flair of Martinelli, but at the moment, he's the one that's looking very, very likely to be leaving for a release clause of around about £49 million, which would be
Hmm.
an absolute steal for someone. But I can't help but think that we need someone who can. Someone who is Premier League proven uh, in comparison to that. And what I mean by that is we've got links with Eze, we've got links with Pedro Neto, and
Yep.
obviously there's the links with a lot of clubs with Nico Williams. And I can't help but think something's in my mind is just saying, I love Eze. I think Eze is a baller. I think he can play in the 8. I think he can play wide right, wide left, number
Hmm.
10. But the one I've been in love with for the last 3 seasons is Pedro Neto. And I know he's made of glass. I understand that his injury record is poor. I totally get all that. But when he plays, he is magnificent to
Yeah.
watch, man. He's an absolute baller. And every time Wolves play him, he does something incredible. He either assists or he sets up a goal or he scores a goal. So I think sentimentally, because I've been so in awe of watching him for the last couple of years, I'd probably pick Pedro Neto out of the three. But
Hmm.
some people will probably shout at the screen and go, "What? It's got to be Eze or Nico Williams." So I can understand why people look at that, and maybe it's just my bias to how good I think Pedro Neto is. The other thing you've got to look at and take into consideration is that Pedro Neto probably isn't going to play more than 15 to 20 games for Arsenal.
Hmm.
And when you're trying to cram in 38 games plus the cups for Wolves, that's why his body is breaking down because he's just not able to do that for whatever reason. So people might think that's a risk of a signing. I really like him and I'd 100% do it. I don't know what the price would be. I think they're all going to be similar prices, if I'm honest. You're
Yeah.
going to have to look at 50 upwards for Eze, Pedro Neto, and obviously Williams has got that release clause. Um, I'd be excited with any of them, though, Alex. I can't sit there and say I'd be shocked by any of them. I'm like, oh no, this is a disgrace. We're signing Eze, or I don't want Pedro Neto, or that Nico Williams is not going to do it in the Prem. I would be very excited by these. I just hope that we get one of them. I hate being like linked with like 2 or 3 players. You end up getting someone you think, the hell did he come from? I didn't expect
Yeah.
him. We've done that quite a few times.
Little Fabio
Arteta and everyone
Vieira.
really got their targets, man.
Yeah. I mean, I like Neto. Don't get me wrong. I would not be worried if we bought him. I'd love that signing. Nico Williams for me is kind of a bit higher up on the
Yeah.
on my list, simply because of the profile. And I quite like the way he enters the box, slightly different. But I look at Eze. It's interesting you mentioned him. Eze for me is kind of like a Emil Smith Rowe replacement for that
There we go.
profile. The way he carries is unbelievable, and it's so nice that he's kind of got that old school Maverick style about him. He's able to just turn a player and go. I love that he can just take men out of the game. Whether or not Arteta was like that is a different matter. He might be just saying, no. Make sure you don't turn 90 degrees. You've got 45 degrees is too much, all right? And then pass it to the side. Give it, I don't know. It's really hard this season to understand where we're going, and who's our real target. Last year was quite obvious when we had Rice coming in. It was clear links. Part of the Arsenal fan of me didn't, fully believe he was going to come, especially for that money. But I think the club this season are almost waiting for a domino effect. It's like the Mesut Ozil saga when everything had to go in place and then we pounced. I think it might be a similar situation where we're waiting to see if another striker moves and we can move in for like an Ottoman at Napoli. Can we get Gyökeres? I think he would be fantastic. If Newcastle don't sell Gordon, because there's obviously the links with him going to Liverpool at the moment, if no one meets the release clause for Bruno, can we move in for Isak there? I mean, I have no idea at the moment, but it's so nice to be linked with these players. There's been far too many years where I've sat there thinking, oh my God, like I look back, the signings of Tomiyasu, of Ramsdale, of Ben White were fantastic signings. However, at the time, I remember feeling a little bit kind of, that's our level now, We have to kind of
Hmm.
speculate to accumulate. And now at least we're at the big boy table where we've wanted to be for the last 20 years. We're there and we can say,
Absolutely.
the top strikers on the planet who are available this season, those three, we can move in and we can get them. The top wingers in the planet, at this Euros, we're looking at Nico Williams. Yeah, we're at that table. We can take him if we want. We can pay the wages. We can actually offer these players an amazing project. I hate that word project, but an amazing project. And they can kind of look at us going, we're in the Champions League now, season on season. We're pushing City closer than anyone else. We are whisker away. Can they get us over the line? Can they kind of cement their place in history with our club? Because I'll use a Liverpool term, it means more to us. It would be nice. Kind of going back to what you were saying about Saliba. If Saliba does, God forbid, I'm going to touch wood. If he does pull a hammy, do an ACL or something, final of the Euros, what do we do? Because do you think we need to bring in a centre back? Are you happy with Ben White moving across? Like what would your plan be, Dan?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. There's a lot of people are talking to me about where you would strengthen in defence. I wouldn't get a left back, believe it or not. I mean, I did mention earlier that left back is probably up for grabs as to whether we have one of the best in the league. I think it's yet to be proven what Timber can do at left back, but
Mm-hmm.
I've been very impressed by early signs. But we have got Zinchenko that can play there as the inverted left back. Kivior can switch across. We've also got Tommy Asu who can play there, who I think actually is probably as good, if not better, at left back than he is at right back. I think his one-on-one defending is one of the best we've got at the club. I think aerially he's definitely the best we've got at the club. So I don't know that we need another left back, but some people disagree and think that we do. For me, I think we need another right-sided centre back because the worry I have is if Saliba gets a knock, Ben White might be able to do a job there, but he can do a job there. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
impressed with him actually, funny enough, when he was at centre back. I didn't think he was outstanding. I think he was okay. I think he's an outstanding right back, but I don't think he was outstanding at centre back. Tommy Asu, likewise, I think can do a job there. Timber can do a job there. But for people saying we need a left back and not a right centre back, well, the players that you're telling me can do a job at left back can also do a job at right centre back. So
Yeah.
it's kind of an argument as to I don't really get the argument, is what I'm getting at. There is players who can cover at left back. The right-sided centre back for me is an issue. Um, and I would go and buy. I would love to go and get Diamande from Sporting Lisbon, but I don't think
Yeah.
he'd come. I'd love to go and look at Mark Guehi, who's done really well for England, but I don't think he'd come because they know they're going to sit on the bench, and that's why Calafiori today has been linked heavily with Arsenal, because I think at 22 years old, like Kivior when he came in young, I think he can come in and understand that he's got to fight his way into the side, and I think that the project at the moment is difficult to try and tempt those players in by saying, "Fancy coming to sit on our bench," but actually we know that Arteta and Edu are not going to be saying that. They're going to be saying, look, we see you as a massive part of our squad. We see you as rotation. We see that you can get into this first team. We know that there's a lot of games and Champions Leagues even more this season. So come and play for us. So you hope that the project will still be tempting enough for him or somebody like that to come in. I know there's a couple of other names we're linked with today, but for me, I do think that there is a defender needed in that department. And if I'm honest with you, bro, I think like there's a player needed in each department. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be surprised if a goalkeeper comes in if Ramsdale was to go. Defender, likewise, we've spoken about midfield, we've just mentioned, and also wide player and striker. I mean, are we going to get one in every position there? That's 5, 6 players. I mean, I'd like to think so, but that's a big ask, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you say about a keeper as well and the right centre back. I look at the right centre back role and I think we have got Timber could play there. You've got Tommy Asu who could play there. You've got White. None of them really convince me. I'm the same as you. When I saw White there, I was never fully kind of convinced. Especially when we had counters on, he couldn't pull out like Saliba can, and Gabriel, they're very good at defending the wide areas for the most part. They both have certain things they're better at, but Ben White doesn't ever kind of strike me as that player. Diamande would be unbelievable. I really like
Yeah,
him as like a central centre back as well, and
yeah,
moving
yeah.
into like an elbow defense or playing a 3. I think he'd be incredible. He'd give us so many different options. He's so young as well, and he's an
Mm,
absolute unit. He's
yeah, he is.
yeah. I could I think other other teams would look at Saliba comes out or Gabriel comes out, he comes in, and that would be horrible to play against. You just go, oh, really? Like, oh, don't get a rest, I think, I know you're kind of pressed for time as well, Dan. So, kind of before we finish, I want you to kind of run through your dream transfer window for us.
Okay.
Obviously, you can't say, I want Thierry Henry reborn and I want to buy him as well. But so,
be realistic.
And then like a more realistic, what you think we might actually do. So,
okay.
Yeah. So go for it. Whichever way round you want to start, Dan.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll go with what I would love to see happen and what I think will happen. I think is probably the best way to look at it. So I would love to go and get Diogo Costa from Porto. I think he's a phenomenal goalkeeper, and I'm not so sure that Raya is the number one that we're going to need. That is the Alisson and Edison level. That's nothing against him. I just think that's his level. I think he's a good goalkeeper, but I don't think he's a world class goalkeeper. And I think we need world class in that position. The way I sum that up is I say if you look at every team that's won the Premier League, their goalkeepers are all better than David Raya.
Yeah.
Whether it is a Kasper Schmeichel or whether it is a Alisson, an Edison, a David Seaman, a Jens Lehmann, a Petr Cech, a Van der Sar, or a Peter Schmeichel. They're all better than David Raya. And that's not anything harsh on David Raya. He's a very good goalkeeper. But I just feel like we could do better there. But I think we'll get a backup goalkeeper. I think David Raya will be the number one. In terms of defence, I would love Diamande, but I feel more realistically it would be somebody like Calafiore, who is being heavily linked today. In midfield, I would love two players, Joshua Kimmich and Yusuf Fofana. They are the two that I would love to have in. Realistically, I can see one of them coming in. I don't know which one it will be. It might be that it's somebody like Onana at Everton that we bring in midfield. De Jong and Bruno, I haven't mentioned them because I just don't think they're realistic. If I'm honest, I would love them; they would be my dream, of course. But I haven't mentioned them because I don't think they're realistic. I'm going to say Pedro Neto just because I'm still in love with him. I think he's a phenomenal player as a wide player. But and I'll stick with that. I think we could get him. I think we could because we've been linked with him for quite some time now. And I'm not too sure about the Nico Williams link and where. I mean, his kind of heart is set on Barcelona, from what I hear. Nico Williams and Eze, I'm not too sure because Spurs are heavily linked with him. So I'm going to stick with Pedro Neto. And up top, I want Alexander Isak, but I think we've got a really good chance of getting one of the victors. And I think it will be Victor Gyökeres that we get ahead of Victor Osimhen. I just feel like Osimhen, I'm not too sure how set we are on him. And I think there's a different profile of striker in Victor Gyökeres, which Arteta and Edu will like in terms of his hold-up play, link-up play, all-round number 9. The fact he's been on form in 2 different leagues and scored over 30 goals now for Portugal and over in England at Coventry, I think will definitely stick in their mind. So that's what I kind of want. I would love an Isak, but I think we might get a Gyökeres. And obviously, I've gone for what I would be in my dream and what I think might happen at Arsenal. So that is what I'm kind of expecting. And that's, of course, if we cover all those positions. It might be that we don't. It might be we only get one midfielder and we only get a striker and we only get a defender, and bring in a backup goalkeeper. That could be a more realistic window. But if you're asking for my dream, then I would want more, of course.
Nah, I would, to be fair, your realistic one, I would take. My God, it'd be so good. The only one I think is like the you said about a backup goalkeeper. Who that is, I don't know right now. I know you said David De Gea. Was it
maybe,
you? I just don't know who we go for. There's not many keepers that at the moment in that kind of mold that I look at and go, I take him. That's who I want. I think if we don't get the money stumped up, especially with the money being thrown all around because PSR at the moment, Ramsdale's got to stay. There's no need.
I totally agree,
need for the club to get rid of him. We have been done over far too many times for cheap prices, and it's about it's high time that the club stand up and go, you know what, we're in a proper selling position right now. Ramsdale, you got a contract, a new contract they signed last year. You're staying, and if you get a hump, that's it. Like you're gonna just have to lump it, But Yeah, I'd take either of your transfers. That's
Absolutely,
fine
and
by
I
me.
think in terms of the goalkeeping situation, people might think I'm harsh. I would love Diogo Costa because I think he's a world class goalkeeper. That's going to be one that everybody wants. It doesn't mean David Raya is not good enough, and we will keep Raya, and he will be number one. The only other thing I can say is that if we're going to get a backup that isn't better than Ramsdale, we should just keep Ramsdale. Because I just don't see the point of downgrading a position when he's there, and he's not happy, but he's not unhappy. He's not going to
Yeah,
start kicking off, in my opinion. And if no one offers more than 30 million, we're just keeping him anyway because we can't keep doing this. We can't say, look, just because you're not playing, you now go for 15 million. So that's where I'm at, mate. And Wojciech Szczesny's mentioned, David De Gea's mentioned because obviously they're available and easy to get. But none of those are better than Aaron Ramsdale. So
no.
I would keep him.
No, I'm hoping. Part of me hopes that he does stay, just to see a little bit of a turn in the fortunes of the club and the way that we deal with things. Not, I'm not 100% like he has to stay or anything, but it would just be nice to see Arsenal do that for once. The same with quite a few of the players, like Smith Rowe. I think Smith Rowe's got to move on. I love him. I will hate when he does go.
Yeah.
But as a fan base, I think we do need to start looking at, the big clubs like the cities that say, they bring in, what's the midfielder they brought in for Wolves? For like
Oh,
silly,
Martins Nunez. Yeah.
they've brought him in. He'll be gone soon. They did the
Hmm.
same with Calvin Phillips. They did the same with Bravo when they had him in. There's so many of these players they spend big money on. This is a player that's come through the ranks with us that we'll get 100% profit for. And unfortunately, injuries have held him back. I think he would have done far better. But he's not a true 10. He's not really like a wide player. I don't like him in the 8 really.
Mm.
So I think for our system, I think Smith Rowe doesn't unfortunately kind of fit in now, and we're moved past that project point. We're at, what are we, phase 4, phase 5? I don't know, but I think it's time that we move on and we start getting good money for these guys. Especially as I said, the money being thrown around and in an interesting manner. I think we can actually put our foot down now and say, nah, you pay up and pay us good money.
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of the outgoings, Eddie and Nketiah, Reece Nelson, you've got to look at the futures of Smith Rowe and Vieira for me. And definitely at the back, Kieran Tierney, Tavares, and I think as well Aaron Ramsdale will be looked at. And they're the sort of players I think that there'll be question marks over how we can sell and much we can get for them. So I hope that we can get some money in so that we can actually add that to what we've got budget wise to go and have a good window, mate.
Yeah. I just don't know how long as well Win the Dog's got a contract for, because I mean, to be fair, the appearances are dwindling on social media recently, so he's probably on his way out as well. How much? Maybe we can get a Nottingham Forest or an Aston Villa to pay up for them as well. That'd be quite nice. I'll take that. But I know you've got to get on as well, Dan. I really do appreciate you coming on. It's absolutely brilliant, considering I think this is episode 4 now of this podcast, and I've had absolute elite guests so far. And I cannot thank you enough. If honestly, guys, if you haven't subscribed to Dan, go and subscribe, because this man knows his ball. So please make sure you do. But
Thanks.
right,
Big up, man.
I'll leave it there. Subscribe and like to the Full Order and Football channel, and I will catch you again next week. Cheers now.